Cross-sections are used to examine existing and proposed surface elevations sampled across an alignment at defined station intervals. In AutoCAD Civil 3D, section data is defined and displayed using sample lines, sections, and section views, all of which are managed through something called a sample line group. An alignment can have more than one sample line group associated with it, each having a unique set of sample lines and sections. If the alignment changes, these sample lines and sections will update as well. As with all Civil 3D objects, there are settings and styles associated to all of those object types, and these are no exception. If you go to the Settings tab, you'll see the sample line category. So this is the first section to make note here. Let's go ahead and zoom into my corridor, and you'll notice I have these perpendicular lines that go across the alignment at equal lengths left and right. If I select one of these, the Contextual tab updates to show you the sample line 14+00 with associated commands. So any of the display properties are defined in the sample line category, sample line styles. So if I select Road Sample Line Style and double click it, these are the display settings applied to those sample line objects. I'll press Escape to clear my selection set. Once you have sample lines, you can create sections and section views. So what's the difference between either one? So a section is the actual grade line that appears across the section view. So as you can see here, when I select this, this is the combined EG section. This too has a style associated to it, which is in the section category. So as you can see here, I've got section styles, and we have an existing ground and a finished ground, and you tell Civil 3D how you want each one of those sections to display. Now, everything that's contained within this area is the section view. So as you can see, when I select this, a grip appears, and if I move this, it moves everything with it. This is very similar to the profile and the profile view relationship. As with profile views, you have section view styles as well. So the section view styles depicted here are the ones that are available that I can select from when we create sections. There's also something called group plot styles, which tells Civil 3D how to display them in a specific type of array, as you can see here. As with all Civil 3D objects, any kind of annotation also has label styles associated to it. So for instance, the sample lines also have sample line label styles, as defined in the sample line category. This label style happens to be using the actual station location. So if I select this and then move this, you'll notice that the label style automatically updates with its related station value. As with everything in Civil 3D, all objects are dynamic. Let's go ahead and change my view to 2 horizontal, and let's find the section 7+00, and we'll keep this bottom view at 7+00. And just to point out the dynamic nature of sample lines and everything else with Civil 3D, if I go ahead and select this sample line and move it to a different location, you will notice that it updates automatically. Sometimes a regen is required to make the updates complete. As with everything else in Civil 3D, there are command settings as well that may benefit you when running the commands related to these object types. For instance, when creating section views, if I expand the section view category, you'll see I have the commands category. And if I want to change any of the settings that appear when you go to the Create Multiple Section View command, I can double-click there, and then any of those settings will be available to change right from this dialog box. One of the other things related to the section is the actual corridor model itself. Let's go ahead and change my view back to a single viewport. Now, as you can see here, I am displaying a cross-sectional view of the roadway, but this is actually not a section line. This here is actually the code set style for this corridor model as it relates to the section view. This is defined in the sample line group properties. If I go to the Prospector tab and then Alignments, as the sample lines are a child of the actual alignment itself, you'll see I have a sample line collection right here, and here are all my sample lines. These are all the sections associated to those sample lines, as well as the section views associated to those sample lines. As I always say, when in doubt, right-click. So if you right-click on any one of these categories, you can go to the properties and change many of the properties related to the objects. So as I mentioned before, the way the quarter model is getting displayed within the cross-section view is because of the code set style defined right here. This is what makes code set styles very powerful, as they can be used in multiple views. They can be used in the assembly view, the quarter model view, which is the plan view, or in the section view, and you can hollow out any of the shading and so on that you'd like to see within the section view. So one of the other really cool aspects of displaying objects within section views, as well as profile views, is other types of objects, such as the pipe network objects. If we look here in this section, I actually happen to have the proposed pipe object, as well as my existing pipe objects. So that's also really cool, and that can be automated. What's even better is the fact that you can actually display any 3D object that you want. So if we look here, and I zoom into this section right here, let's just change my scale to a scale that we would normally plot with if they were cross sections. And I have this electric line that's in my section view. So this actually displays in my plan, profile, and cross-section view. It's a feature line that was projected onto my section view. This functionality is also available in the profile view. So let's go ahead and just look here in my plan view where this lives. So here it is in my plan view. And if we zoom in a little bit, you'll see that it actually is using a feature line style that actually displays the electric AutoCAD line type. If I scroll down to my profile view, it's also in there as well. So Civil 3D really allows you to display any object type with an elevation in the plan, profile, and cross-section views, making it really easy to see within your design. A sample line cuts across an alignment and can be used for creating cross-sections. You use styles to control how sample lines are displayed in a drawing, as well as their associated labels. Once created, they are placed in a sample line group. Regarding the settings and styles, if you go to the Settings tab, there is a sample line category, and this is where you will find the different settings and styles for sample lines and their associated labels. I already have one here called Road Sample Line. If I double click it, this style simply has two component types, the line and the vertices, and what layer each one should go on. As far as any associated labels, if we go to the label styles, you'll see that there are a few in this drawing, but if we just go to the one called Section Name, this one here will simply display the sample line station value as shown right here. So how do you create sample lines? If you look to the Home tab, Profile and Section Views, there's a Sample Lines tool. When you select that tool, you are prompted to select an alignment. You can also right-click to open the dialog box and choose the alignment that you want to create sample lines from. Remember, a sample line group is a child of the alignment. I'll select our proposed alignment and click OK. In the Create Sample Line Group dialog box, you can give this a name, and we'll say for cross sections. And the reason I'm calling it this is that you can have multiple sample line groups for an alignment, and in the next section, we will be discussing how to actually get earthwork volumes. You will need a sample line group to create earthwork volume reports. What you can also do in this dialog box is select the data sources you want to sample. So when looking at the available data sources, I do not want the storm network just yet, as well as the existing one as well. And as far as ground surfaces, I only need one combined existing ground, and I do not need the finished ground, because what I'm going to use is the quarter model as a quarter section to display in my cross-section views. And that is defined right here. I'll also toggle off these other two quarter surfaces as I do not need them. One of the other things that you may want to consider is defining a layer for the actual entity itself. Although the section style and the code set style will define the different layers the components will go on, this layer defined here can globally control what layer those objects go on. I'll select over here, and I'll just simply give it a suffix of EG. Click OK, and for this one, I'll click in here and we'll give it a suffix of corridor, and click OK. These are the sample line styles to use, and these are the sample line label styles to use. Click OK, and you now have these sample line tools with a jig appearing next to your alignment that you've selected. So some of the things that you can do right now is I can actually click here to edit the name template that will be defined for the name of the sample line. By default, it's the sample line station value. I can also select a different alignment if I want to. And then here's the name that we just created. What you can also do is you can choose the method by which to create sample lines. Let's use an existing polyline to create a sample line. I'll select that option, and what I already have predefined in this drawing is a polyline that is perpendicular to this alignment, and it's to signify a driveway. There are many instances where you might want to actually see a cross-sectional view to show a grade for a driveway. I'll go ahead and just click on this, and then right-click, and it created a sample line from that polyline. Let's say I want to create another one based on some points in my drawing. So I'll go ahead and select the Pick Points on Screen option. And what I want to do is create one at the center line of this driveway. Now I don't have an existing polyline, but what I can use is the mid between 2 points snap. And I can snap between two graphics here, which will give me my center line. I'll do the same thing for the bottom. All I'm doing here is doing a shift right click to get the snap override menu. And then snapping to the two objects that I want to get the midpoint between. I'll press enter. And then let's just press enter again, and now we'll see that we actually have two sample lines. So if I select any sample line, you'll see a bunch of vertices appear. If I wanted to simply change, let's say, the station value, I could simply move this along the alignment. But let's say I want to actually extend this to the intersection of the alignment here to actually show the center line of the alignment. I could try and snap and get there, but what I can also do in the Sample Line Contextual tab is I can go to the Edit Sample Line command. When I select that, I'm prompted to pick the sample line, so I'll go ahead and pick this. And you can now go in and change some default settings here. So for instance, if I want to change this to 5, I can change that to 5, and it'll go all the way 5 units to the right of the alignment. If I change this back to 0, it now goes to the center line of the alignment. Note that you can also change the name here, as well as snap to the northern and eastern if you wanted to. For now, I'm good. I'll press escape. And now I've got that new addition to this sample line. Although that's great that we can actually create specific sample lines and we can actually define each individual station, we obviously want a batch way to create sample lines. Let's go back to the sample lines command. I'll select my alignment by right-clicking and then selecting it. Now notice how we are not prompted to select the sources that we want to sample. Because we already have a sample line group created called for cross sections, we are not prompted to sample different sources. So in the drop-down here, what I can do is select by range of stations. And in this dialog box, what I will do is just define the parameters to actually go in and define the sample lines. So you can say from alignment start if you want to, but let's say we do not, so we'll say false. And we'll go over here, click once, and then we'll pick on this button here to access the alignment information. And let's say we want to begin at this station value right there. That gets us close, and we'll go ahead and say we want to start at 150. Then for the end of the alignment, we can say true in this case because we do want to go to the end of the alignment. Now you define this swaths. So right now, by default, these are using my default command settings. But I can go in here, and as a little tip here, what I can do is just pick on that pick button there, and I'll just kind of do a general snapping from the center line to the widest swath within my corridor model. So that kind of looks like about, let's say, right here. So I'll just snap here and go somewhere like that, just to get a distance. So we have 100 feet. So let's say we want to make this 100 feet to the left and 100 feet to the right. You can define the increments along the alignment that you want to sample, and the different sample controls such as the PC PT, if you had any super elevation points, if you want to create a sample line at those different locations. So I'll go ahead and say true to the PC and PTs and super elevation critical points as well. Click OK. I press escape to initiate it. we now have all the sample lines for this alignment. As we look here, we notice that some of these are not actually going beyond the daylighting. So to change these, there is no global way. But what you can do is you can actually select these. I'll just select a few here, just for demonstration purposes. And this is an AutoCAD functionality, not a Civil 3D specific functionality. I'm going to make these what's called hot grips. By doing so, I can just hold the Shift key down on the keyboard and select the arrow, because that's the one that I want to actually be able to change. By selecting them like that, when I pick one, they will all stretch. If I didn't make them hot grips, they would not all stretch. Only the one that I actually selected would actually stretch. So where do sample lines live? Again, they are a child of the actual alignment. So let's expand my alignments category, go to centerline, go to bypass, and in the sample line groups category, I have my sample lines right here. Let's make this a little bit bigger. And you'll notice that I can actually individually select different sample lines. But if I want to change anything global, what you want to do is right-click on the sample line group itself and go to Properties. So let's say we want to actually change the code set style that will be used by this sample line group to generate the sections. I can do this in a global way, or I can do this individually by selecting each individual sample line. But most probably, you want to do this in a global way. So I'll select the Sections tab, and then in the Style column, I can go in here and change the actual code set style that will be used for all sample lines within the sample line group. Right now, we do not have any section views or material lists, so that's why nothing is being displayed. Notice how you can also change a group label if you want to change all of the label styles that are being used by the sample lines. Click OK. And now those changes have been made. Again, if you need to change any of the sample lines or you want to remove a specific one, you can do so by simply selecting it, deleting it, or by selecting it and actually modifying it. Again, notice how I can actually change this to be non-orthogonal. This is pretty cool. This would actually update the section to show exactly where this sample line is being projected along the sample sources. If I want to change this back to orthogonal, simply right-click and then choose the Make Orthogonal command. Now, one of the other really cool tips is, let's say I want to delete the rest of these sections that I'm not going to be using at all. So if I click right now, you'll notice that, and this is before I run any command like the Erase command, if I just pick in the drawing, I have some options for fence, WP for window polygon, CP for crossing polygon. I'll simply type F enter, and then I can select all these sample lines that I don't want. And sometimes you have to run it again. So I'll just pick here, F, and then simply press delete, and that will delete any of the sample lines that I do not need anymore. Cross sections are a perpendicular view of your corridor and surfaces, as well as other additional objects that you can add. There are many settings and styles related to section views. So let's go ahead and discuss those right now. If you go to the Settings tab, and under the Section View category, we have the Section View Styles. And these are the available section views. If we go ahead and open one of these, let's go ahead and double-click the Road Section style. You'll see that there are many settings that you can define within each of these tabs here. You can also define the different labels that will appear at the different parts of the axes and the locations of the titles and so on. The Display tab, as with all styles, will tell Civil 3D what subcomponents of the style to turn on and off and what layer they should be placed on. Section styles are also important in that they define the way the grade line will look of the surface that displays. Notice I have two here, one for existing ground and finished ground. This is a pretty simple style in that all it does is define the layer that the line should go on. So let's go ahead and create a single section view. There are a couple ways to do this. You can go to the Profile and Section Views, go to the Section Views dropdown, and select the appropriate command, which is Create Section View. Or, an even easier method is to navigate to the sample line that you want to create the section for, and click on the Create Section View dropdown, Create Section View. This will automatically open the wizard and select the sample line that you selected in the drawing. So the first part of the wizard is just some general settings that you need to define. The section view name, the style that will be used as we mentioned before, the sample line group, and so on. I'll click Next. How do you want the offsets to be defined? Typically you want automatic to be defined, but you can define a user-specified offset. Click Next. What's the elevation? Again, you'd probably go with automatic, but you can define a user-specified minimum and maximum elevation. Next, in the section display options, this is where you tell the different sources that you are sampling how to display in the section view. You can also define labeling. Now in this case, I want to display the existing ground, but I do not want any labels. So I'm going to pick here and then set this to no labels. This is a predefined label set that will not display any labels. Click OK. You can also define the different styles for the different components. In this case, all we have is existing ground and a corridor section. Click Next. If you want to show any offsets in the data bands below the section view, you would define them here. I can do offsets, I can do major and minor offset elevations, and so on. For this example, we'll just select none. We'll click Create Section View. Notice the command line window is asking us for a location to define the section view origin, and I'll place it right here. Since I already have my sample line selected, I need to press Escape to clear the contextual ribbon, which is related to the sample line. I'll zoom in, and there's our section view with our section line, which is right here, and our corridor section. Now, as we look in our corridor section, we notice that it is not displaying correctly. So we accidentally selected the wrong code set for this corridor model within the section view. I can change this in a few ways. Let's go ahead and do it through the Prospector tab. I'll select the Prospector tab, and remember, sample lines are a child of the alignment that they are created from. So I'll expand the alignments category, centerline alignments, bypass one, and then sample line group, and there's our 4 cross sections sample line group. I'll right-click on this and go to Properties. So within here, you can see I've defined how the sources should be displayed within each section. Right now it's set to all codes. I want to change this to a code set style that will clear out the shapes and show some labeling as well. So we already have one pre-created here called View-Edit. We'll click OK, and that will automatically update the section view. Again, you can see the power of this functionality. If I have multiple section views, this would update in all the views automatically. So as we zoom in here, we notice we have offset elevations at the crucial points and grade lines at the appropriate links. Now what we're also noticing is that in this section view, we actually are not displaying a centerline. So the centerline axis is not displayed. Let's go ahead and turn that on. I'll select my section view, which is the actual grid, and then in the contextual tab, I'll select the section view properties dropdown and go to Edit Section View Style. In the display tab is where you tell Civil 3D what should be turned on and off for the object that you have selected. So we want to look for the centerline axis, and there it is. And notice how the light bulb is off, so we'll just turn it on, click Apply, and then move your dialog box out of the way to see it display. You can also just click OK, that would also work as well. Press Escape to clear your selection set. Now, let's go ahead and create multiple section views. So I want to create sections for all the sample lines created here. I'm going to pan to the upper right part so I have some free space to put this, as the cross-section views will automatically display from the lower left corner of the section views. One other setting to point out in the Settings tab is under the Section View category, there's also something called Group Plot Styles. Let's go ahead and open this one up. And this will tell Civil 3D how to create the array, which is your cross-sections. You can play around with these numbers here to get the appropriate settings that you want, and then it will automatically plot them appropriately. There's also the Array tab to define plot rules for the different sections. So in this case, we'll go right to the Profile and Section Views panel in the Home tab, click on Section Views dropdown, and select the Create Multiple Views tool. So in this case, I want to select all my sample lines, so I just say Automatic. You can also define a range. And of course, we want the section view style defined. Select Next. Notice how this is just allowing us to pick the group plot style right here. When we discuss plan productions, there's also a way to create sheets from your cross sections. Click Next. Again, the offset range and the elevation range should be set to automatic. In the section display options, make sure you set this to no labels. And notice how View Edit is now the default code set style for the quarter section because we've already changed that. Click Next. We'll change this to None. And then we'll click Create Section Views, and we'll identify the section view origin again. This is the lower left corner of your section views. Notice how we now have all our sections displayed for us. Again, any changes to any of the objects defined in your drawing will update the section view automatically. As we're perusing our sections, we notice that we also want to actually see the pipe network objects within our section views. They are not displayed right now. So let's go ahead and sample those so they can be added into our section views. I can select one section view and go to the Sample More Sources, and then right here I can actually add in the other sources that I have not added yet to my cross-section views. We'll add the existing storm, and we'll add the proposed one as well. If you want to define a different layer for each of the objects here, you could do so as well, but notice how it's already being defined automatically. This was defined when we created the pipe networks and we told Civil 3D what layers to put them on. We'll click OK. And notice how all of our sections have updated automatically with the pipe networks at the stations as they cross. So as we'll zoom around here, we'll notice that in the sections where there are structures, they have automatically updated. Again, this is using the pipe network styles to display the structures and pipes for us automatically. There are a few ways to add labeling to the different parts in the cross-section views. Let's first look at the corridor sections. So I'm going to zoom into one of my cross-section views to see how it's actually labeling the corridor section. So the corridor section consists of this object right here. As you hover over it, you'll notice it highlights. If I select it and look in the contextual ribbon, you'll see there's an option to edit code labels. Now all this is going to do is it's going to automatically open the code set style dialog box for the code set style that's applied to this corridor section. I'll go ahead and click on that. As you can see, we're in the code set style view-edit. Now remember, when we talked about the corridor overview, corridors are made up of links, points, and shapes. So all you have to think about is what part of the corridor do you want to label in the cross-section view. So if I expand the link, let's say as we're looking at the corridor section right here, we notice that it's showing it in a percentage. Well, I would like this to show a ratio type slope label. There's already one in this file, but I need to know the name of that link code. In this case, it's daylight. So if I scroll down in the link category and go to daylight, I notice that the label style is set to view-edit sections, which is just a standard label that's used for all the different labels throughout the corridor section. So if I click on this Pick Style button, from the drop-down here, there's already a pre-existing label style that was created here for me called Steep Grades. I'll click OK, click OK again, and now you'll notice that the labels for all the corridor sections will update with that new label style applied. So again, all you have to know is the actual part of the corridor that you want to label and the name of it, whether it's a point, link, or shape code, and you can label pretty much anything. As we can see here, we're labeling the point codes for the sidewalk in and sidewalk out, and we're labeling the point code for the TBC, as well as the link code for the pavement. Just as a review of the pipe network objects, if I zoom into a section I have here, I can see that I already happen to have a pipe network object labeled. I have the pipe right there, and I have the structures right there. And the way I created these labels, as we discussed in the pipe network labeling video, is I selected this pipe network object and then just add network part label. Then you can choose the label style that you would like to apply to that specific pipe network object in the corridor section. Let's talk about labeling the actual sections. So I'm going to zoom into this standalone section view. And let's say just for this section here, I want to show offset elevations at a specific interval from the center lines. What I'll do here is select the actual section. Don't forget, that's the grade line of the surface that's being displayed in this section view. When you select the section, you'll notice the contextual ribbon updates. And in the labels panel, I can pick Edit Section Labels. The different types of labeling that you can add in here are major offsets, minor offsets, segments, and grade breaks. So let's say I just want to add major offsets and I want to show some offset and elevations. I'll select Add, and in the increments column, I'll click in here and type in 25. As far as an anchor, you can define it as an offset from that point, or you can just define this, let's say, at 0. I'll click OK, and then just for that section view, I'm displaying offset elevations at 25-foot increments for this section. Again, this is a pretty global type labeling process. If you want to get very granular and label the actual components of the roadway, you're better off doing that with the quarter section as we talked about in the first part of this video. Some of the other labeling methods that we can use are offset elevation and grade labels. So I'm going to select this section view, not the section line as I just did to get these labels. And then I'll go ahead and select Add View Labels dropdown, and I'll pick Offset Elevation. Now this is a pretty simple one. All I have to do here is actually snap to that location, and notice how it labels automatically the offset elevation from this centerline of this section. Negative means left, and positive goes to the right. You can also change this to a grade label, and it's asking you to define the 2 points for the grade. So if I want to actually define the grade for this slope, I can snap there, and then snap there, and there's my grade label. So as you can see, you can pretty much label any part of your section view as well as any of the objects within your quarter section as well.